Great. Well, thank you for joining today's WeConnect International and Intel Today for the Procurement Insight session presented by Gráinne D'Arcy, who is a category manager within corporate strategic procurement at Intel, and she is also a supplier diversity champion. My name is Maggie Berry. I'm delighted that you've joined us for today's session. I'm the Executive Director for WeConnect International here in Europe. And whether you're joining live or you're listening back to the recording, I'm really pleased that you've been able to join us. And while the travel restrictions imposed on us by COVID-19 mean that we can't meet in person and bring the community together, we are using technology to maintain our ability to create connections and provide useful insight for our women business owners. Today, Gráinne is going to be sharing a high-level overview of how procurement works at Intel, their expectations of suppliers, and really what suppliers should be ready for if you're going to embark or participate in a tender process with them, and maybe a bit of a structure about the Intel business, and hopefully insight into what Intel do and don't buy, and just an overview that will hopefully be helpful for you if you're considering looking to work with Intel. We will have time for questions at the end, so please do make the most of this opportunity to ask Gráinne your questions and ask anything that you'd like to understand about doing business with Intel. Can I just, if you're joining live, just can I ask you all just to stay on mute, and please do use the chat functionality if you've got questions. We will get to them at the end. I hope this is helpful. We'd love your feedback, so please do share that with us afterwards. And really, that's it from me. Gráinne, thank you so much for presenting for us today, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, Maggie. It's certainly something that we look forward to every year as the WeConnect conference, so happy to support virtually today. As Maggie said, I won't go into my intro. My day-to-day job is support sales and marketing procurement in EMEA, and I'm the indirect procurement lead globally for Intel. So been involved in Supplier Diversity for a long time, along with my colleagues Dee and Meg, who a lot of you probably would know already. So like Maggie said, I'm happy to answer questions at the end, and I can share my details and my email address later. So what I propose today, go through a kind of high level in terms of Intel, our strategy, where we're at, how we're changing as a company, where we're located globally, speak about our SD&I program, our Supplier Diversity Inclusion program, and then I'll speak to like our procurement and sourcing process. And like I said, happy to take questions at any stage. Yeah, so I suppose from an Intel perspective, sorry, let me just our purpose is to create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of every person. And really, I suppose what this means is that, Intel is, Intel put the silicon in Silicon Valley, where, we're trying to enable technology for good and to support and improve the lives of everybody in the world. So whether that's in healthcare, infrastructure, technology, whatever it is, I suppose we're trying to enable through technology the potential of data to drive these innovations. In terms of our strategy, it's really around, to make the world's best semiconductors. And I suppose, in terms of like the technology piece, it's really trying to lead and continue to innovate across, broad spectrum of silicon and platforms to support the modern data center. We're trying to do this with an absolute obsession in terms of focus on our customer. So customer obsessed is something that a lot of us kind of would like was one of the mantras here at Intel, and really trying to deliver in terms of efficiency and precision, our operational excellence there. And I guess what underlies all of this really is, in terms of the foundation, is the workforce, and having the skilled and talented workforce that try and do the right things the right way. And I guess that underpins everything that we do here at Intel. In terms of our, where we're going, I suppose Intel is transforming from a company focused primarily on PC and server computing to really building performance technology that analyzes, moves, and stores across these different market segments. And really, I guess the focus on this is huge, and it's seen to be a $300 billion opportunity by 2024. So this is huge and significant. So again, this is, I suppose, the whole move from PC compute to really data-driven company, and this underpins everything that we're focused on in terms of our strategies. I thought this was really kind of useful slide in terms of our global footprint that you may not be aware of. So you can see here, really, these are the main factories that we have, our fabs and assembly test locations globally. Our headquarters are over there in Santa Clara in California, so as mentioned in Silicon Valley. We've got huge, obviously, sites in Oregon, in Arizona, in Chandler. But from a EMEA perspective, our key factory locations are Intel in Leixlip is in, and Shannon is R&D. So like I said, focus in Ireland and Israel, Kiryat would be one of our key locations there. In terms of, I suppose, other EMEA locations that would be significant, we have a lot of sales and marketing offices in EMEA, and our key countries in EMEA for sales and marketing would be UK, France, Germany, and Russia. And then obviously we do support and have representation then in other countries as well in EMEA. But like I said, those four are the main sales and marketing locations. So that might be of interest to folk as well. Just thought this was kind of a good, picture of kind of in terms of our scale across the different sectors, and I guess some kind of key information. So I suppose $72 billion total revenue last year. We have like 100 billion transistors are produced every second in terms of manufacturing. Literally, the fact the fabs don't shut down, they're continuously producing, or silicon's being produced, transistors to semiconductors. In terms of the supply chain, which is the middle column there, I think again, you're aware our target was 1 billion of spend with diverse suppliers by 2020, and we achieved that a year early. I'll share that in the following slide. We do 800 plus supplier audits in the last 5 years, and we have responsible minerals ranking #1 for the last 6 years. So again, sustainability is huge for us. Ethics is huge for us as a company, and that underpins everything we do. And then you can see there in terms of the outreach in the community. So obviously, one of the responses we had for COVID, we contributed $60 million to COVID response and support globally. We do a lot of volunteer work in the community as well. 17 million hours are logged since 1995. This is done across every site, every location. Everyone gets involved. So I think this is huge. And like I said, in terms of sustainability, again, mineral-free, recycling, conservation of water really is huge focus for the company. Okay, so I'll move then into looking at kind of supplier diversity. And I suppose one of the key things for us really is that it's part of our overall D&I culture, our strategy. So along with, HR, diversity, inclusion, which everyone is aware of, supply chain is one of the pillars as part of this. So this, if you like, is, underpinned in terms of our overall global D&I strategy. And we look at, in Intel, 5 key categories for diverse businesses: so minority, women, people with disability, LGBT, and veteran or service disabled. We obviously operate at 51% owned and operated, which we connect espouses. And from an Intel perspective, I think up to now we're in about 27 countries globally. We continue to move forward, identify opportunities, and work with other corporates to identify opportunity and work with WeConnect in terms of getting certification available in that country. One of the key things at Intel that we do is we're trying to drive it down through our whole supply chain. So that's both in terms of our tier 1, which are direct contracted supply base, and our tier 2. So there, if you like, the subcontractor, the work on behalf of the tier 1 on Intel business. So Tier 2 is a huge part of our program globally, and we try and work with our Tier 1 suppliers. We embedded in contracts, for example, that they would strive to have 10% of their spend with Intel with diverse suppliers. So again, trying to drive that through the supply chain and have it in their scorecards, etc. So that's a key kind of differentiating factor for Intel globally. In relation, if you look at the chart there, so you can see like back in 2015 is when our target of 1 billion in spend by 2020 was, I suppose, publicly announced at CES by our CEO at the time. And we were delighted to achieve that 1 year early. So last year we spent 1.02 billion with diverse suppliers. Obviously, we've a huge internal targets, for this year, so it's definitely something that we hope to surpass. And obviously, it's obviously a lagging indicator. So by kind of February, March next year, that information will be understood and made public. I mentioned around, I suppose, our key strategy in terms of 2030 and looking ahead is called the RISE strategy. And essentially, this is just underpins Intel's ongoing commitment to corporate responsibility and sustainability. So through the strategy, we're striving to create a responsible, inclusive and sustainable future enabled through the technology and the people that work passionately at the company. So I suppose this initiative and strategy, like I said, it's across all the company. So we're able now to kind of push further our supplier diversity goals and strategies and link it to this RISE strategy, which is, like I said, proliferating every business segment in the company. And as part of that, we've set a goal of spending 2 billion with diverse suppliers by 2030. So doubling on our goal that we had previously. So this is huge. And so to that effect, then, Bob Swan, our CEO, has his message around kind of stepping off the sideline, delivering, be more impactful, and really driving to this strategy. We've embedded already supplier diversity within our processes and our procurement policies, including our ERFX, which is basically our electronic RFP system, and our scorecards. So we are basically trying to include at least one diverse supplier in all RFPs. We're now able to track that and measure that across the different business units. So that's something obviously that we will be driving, and we'll understand what gaps, what are the categories that we're looking for diverse suppliers. And one other new thing, I guess, as well, is around our sub goals for 2023 are around minority-owned businesses and spend with them. So it's 250 million spend with US Black-owned suppliers and 500 million with all minority-owned companies, and that piece is globally. So I know there's a lot of information there, but I just thought it was kind of good to have it on one slide as reference. But again, it calls out our policies, what we're looking at, are linked to our big RISE strategy for 2030, and the commitment, I suppose, from senior leadership as well, which I think is key. Okay. All right, so I just want to kind of leave this. So this is like a quote that, again, you may be aware of, but Robert Noyce was one of our co-founders back in 1968. And again, it's right, don't be encumbered by history, go off and do something wonderful. So do something wonderful, I guess, is one of our internal taglines as well. So this is why we're looking for innovation. We're looking for diverse suppliers to be part of our supply chains and help us drive forward with this. So I thought I'd probably take like a few minutes then maybe to speak to our internal procurement, process at Intel. So I suppose it starts off really in terms of at a strategy at a category level, and defining that strategy, understanding, what are our requirements, and, really building on that. I suppose then we're looking externally, with our market intelligence, understanding the market, who are the suppliers, how can we, assess the suppliers. So we would do all that analysis and then bring that as part of our overall sourcing strategy for that category. The next step then would be that we would go out to our RFP for that area. And in terms of that, like I said, the goal is to include at least one diverse supplier in that RFP. Again, we would have a scorecard that we would have internally, for evaluating our suppliers. That could be on cost, quality, availability, sustainability, technology. So there's many different areas, and depending on what the category is, there's flexibility in terms of the internal scoring that we have with our stakeholders and our key business partners. So that's certainly a key thing. So again, supplier diversity piece will kind of get you at the table for inclusion. But again, as part of our assessment of suppliers, we're trying to understand that we've got the right suppliers included. And, you're not just there because you're a diverse supplier, you're there because you can actually, perform and exceed expectation in relation to that category and that business. Internally then, I suppose, from a procurement perspective, we would have a negotiation plan. We would have our different, different terms or different conditions that we would have flexibility, to negotiate. We would have our business terms, our legal terms, and that would all build up in terms of our overall negotiation plan and strategy. Obviously, that's internal. Then we would go through the obviously the RFP process. Like I mentioned, the bids would come back. We would do our analysis. We would look at our scoring, working with our stakeholders, and then down select to either one or two suppliers. We would typically allow suppliers to have opportunity to present to Intel in relation to their bid. We can ask questions over and back. And then, like I said, then it gets down to the point then where we actually do select the chosen supplier. And then it moves then in terms of integrating that supplier into Intel, our systems, our processes, and, bring it into sustaining. I suppose they would become a preferred supplier on our system, and we would move forward in terms of the engagement across that business sector. So that's kind of high level in terms of our sourcing process. It really depends in terms of how long the RFP process is. Really depends on the business, on the content, on what we're looking to source, be a product or service. I would say, because now we're using an electronic system for issuing our RFPs, for the information coming back, that definitely has speeded up the process for sure. So, I would definitely think, anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks could be, I guess, a benchmark, I suppose, in terms of the timing. I'm trying to think what other kind of questions people might have, but I suppose, like you saw from the global picture, it's essentially huge scope globally. We purchase everything really in terms of our factory. The majority of our spend that we would have would be in the I suppose around the factory spares and services. They would tend to be obviously with public companies. They would be what we would term copy exact. So we have the same, manufacturing process globally. So we would tend to go with global suppliers in a lot of cases there. This is where our tier 2 program kicks in. Then we're trying to work with our diverse suppliers as part of that process. So that's really what we're looking at there. Obviously, they're big factories. We've got people there. So any services you can think of on the facility side, on the indirect procurement side, so that would be on the IT, sales and marketing, HR, logistics. They would all be included. So there's a huge scope and spectrum in terms of our services that we would look to procure for sure. And like I said, there is the key kind of locations, and within that, you would know kind of the key folk that, from an EMEA perspective, that we could help make introductions based on your capabilities. So Maggie, I don't know if there's any questions or if there's something you want me to kind of cover more.
No, Grania, thank you very much. That's really, really helpful. I've scribbled down a few questions that I'm going to ask you now, but please, if you've got any questions you'd like to ask Grania, either let me know in the chat or come off chat. But can I ask you just about, you just touched on there about how long an RFP process takes, because I know within the large corporates, it does take a long time. And you said kind of on average 4 to 8 weeks. So that was certainly going to be one of my questions. What are you using a specific technology for that? Is there a platform that the suppliers, our women-owned businesses, maybe should register on, or is there anything like that, or is it
yeah, so we would use Ariba for the majority of our online ERFPs. We would use Ariba system. There's certain categories that don't. There's other kind of in the logistics space, there would be different technology that they would use. In some areas it may be a more more manual process, maybe in some areas as well. But for indirect procurement, it's all, like, I would say, like, we're 99% on Ariba. So that would be, in terms of registering, again, we would work with the supplier to make sure we have the right contacts, email address, everything, and that they would have the links with Ariba. For any of the technical piece, they would contact Ariba, I suppose, in terms of getting set up, but it's pretty intuitive. Like I said, it does send out emails, you click on links, it all kind of works pretty seamlessly. So I definitely think, that would be one of the key things. But again, we tend not to have many issues in people getting set up on Ariba. No, there's nothing new they need to look at. And Yeah,
and indeed, and I think possibly quite a number of the women-owned businesses already maybe have used Ariba with other corporate clients. So hopefully it would be a system that they've used. Does Intel have a portal or anything that any of the suppliers could proactively register on, or does yours work around specific opportunities as they come along?
Yeah, I think like that, we don't have like a magic master list of all the RFPs that are going to come up for categories. Things happen really quickly, as you can imagine, where suddenly there's requirement. We're looking for innovation. There's new markets, obviously, even in terms of COVID, like, things have changed in many different categories in terms of our business models there. So I think, like, we do have supplierdigital.com portal. I would say, though, again, a lot of suppliers, diverse, non-diverse, would input their information there in terms of an intake process. But I really think the best thing to do is, make yourself known to us, like that, Maggie, where you share, like, the supplier of the week and things like that.
Yeah.
That's very useful for us. We send that out then to the different internal counterparts for every RFP, like I mentioned. So there is the Ariba system, there is the questions there that people have to comply with and fill out, whether they're including a diverse supplier or not. And as part of that process, they also they work with somebody in our Centre of Excellence who helps them, upload the information. And as part of that, they actually say to them, have you spoken to the champion? So whatever area they're in, there's a champion, be it sales, marketing, IT, and they say, have you spoken to them, for this business? Have you included a diverse supplier? So again, it's around just making sure that we know who the diverse suppliers are, and we're hoping, I suppose, through the new database, etc., Maggie, that will be even more easier to share and to find diverse businesses.
Indeed, and that's the new WeCommunity platform for WeConnect businesses, which is based on SAP Ariba technology. So I'm hoping it will.
Yeah.
I've got one. There's a few questions in the chat. I've got one more question. In fact, it's almost, Cheryl's just asked it around tier 1 suppliers. My question was going to be, you mentioned, obviously, and this is something that's well known within the supplier diversity community, Intel have a very strong, what we would call a tier 2 program around engaging your prime suppliers.
Yes.
Is there information available anywhere about who those big suppliers are, so that our WBEs could start to try and get to know them? Is that information that is shared, is out there? It might not be, but
not. Yeah. So I suppose, when overall into perspective, we don't share who our suppliers are. Not even a point something percent of suppliers would get the Wall Street Journal ad as part of our quality awards and program. I suppose the way we would do, like, in terms of supplier diversity and the way the sharing happens, like I said, it's around, we would hope that, the suppliers are registered with WeConnect, that the other corporates also have their suppliers, and then the pool gets bigger, and then we go in and access suppliers that way. I think that's really how we would do it. Then I would think, from an Intel perspective, then we would have like matchmaking sessions, and we've had it in the past. We had some in Israel more recently. So with those kind of sessions, we would invite our tier 1 suppliers. We would invite who we think would be good links on the tier 2 side, and facilitate those matchmaking sessions. So I think that's how we would do it in terms of a collaboration for the list.
That's really good to know, because I think, I know for certain groupings of our businesses, they're likely going to work through a tier 1 or a prime. So that's really really helpful. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions. So Cheryl's asked, in terms of scorecard, is there a minimum criteria for diverse businesses, for example, turnover, the value, employees, and maybe that's the question actually about any supplier that you work with. Do you have minimum expectations or criteria that actually below that probably Intel might not look to engage them? I don't know if you can share.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of, I guess, our initial, before we even go to RFP, it's assessing the suppliers and say, do they have the capabilities? Are they at the right level in terms of, when their business started, how many employees and that. But I think ultimately, even if it is a very small business, there's still opportunity, there. It's not that we say, oh, you're a small business, this is the turnover. We wouldn't look at suppliers with that level of turnover. I think it's definitely, there is opportunity there. We can, I suppose, at the assessment level, we would look at that and see if the capabilities are there. We've had things in the past where suppliers may not have been able to take on the full scope, and we've helped and mentored them in terms of, next time maybe look at this, or here's some opportunity here, or like that, do the introductions with the tier one. I think that's another area. But I certainly don't think that we would include a supplier if we didn't think that they were there, to actually win the business. I think that's the key for us. The assessment is done up front versus unnecessarily including someone going through the whole RFP process and then saying, well, we just did it just to tick the box. That's not what we do. Yeah.
No, and I mean that's a kind of a time used up from everybody. Yes.
Yeah.
So okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And then we've got another question from Martha around. Oh, actually, this is related to the scorecard as well. Which when procuring, you mentioned about the scorecard, but what are your key requirements? What are some, and then as a second question, what are some of the main challenges you've come across when working with suppliers? I guess any supplier that maybe our businesses listening to this or joining live or listening back to the recording should know about. Any top tips or insight that you might share about maybe a couple of top do's and don'ts from your perspective about what you've seen as work.
Yeah, I suppose like that. I mean, from a procurement perspective, we're trying to manage the relationship with the suppliers. So I suppose sometimes we might have suppliers who try and, contact multiple different people within the business and things like that. And I think, what we're trying to do is build the relationship, and we're trying to be, on a procurement side, be the advocate for the supplier. So like that, if there's other, other areas you've branched into, other things you've done for other corporates, let us know, because we want to be able to, I guess, promote you internally across different business units. We're starting now, and I see Dee is on the call, to go into different business units, show them the spend they have with diverse suppliers, figure out their opportunities and showcase some of our key diverse suppliers that we have across different areas. So, and like that, if you're supporting another corporate, you'll be able to support Intel. So I think that's the key there, and to really, showcase and promote, your key capabilities, and I think that's key for us, that we can share. Here's what they're doing. I think everyone, if they hear your story, I think that's a good way to engage with the corporates as well. And like I said, we are your advocates internally, and even across, not just so Dee and I are obviously EMEA based, but we're onto our US colleagues, Asia. So externally, we're trying to push it with other corporates. Internally, we are continuing, this is a continuous process for us to engage with our business stakeholders. They own the budgets at the end of the day. So we're trying to say, here's a diverse supplier, look what they've done, here's the innovation they've brought. So I think that's really key, that you call out really what is the niche areas, what are the things you've achieved. And I think that's something that we can push it forward internally. So that would be key.
Brilliant. And with regards to the scorecard, are you able to share the elements that are included within that? Maybe things that the businesses can get ready to have in place before to contract with, or
sure. Yeah, I suppose high level, the different, what it's made up can be different based on the category, but high level, obviously cost, you've got to be cost competitive, quality. So again, cost, CQUATS is what we call it internally. So cost, quality, availability, technology, and sustainability. They would be kind of the key things. So again, the questions that are around that depend on the category that you're actually procuring, but they would be the high level areas. So again, show that you're competitive, that you're market competitive. Again, we use actually a lot of e-auction now as well. So it's called O&E or e-auction. Again, it's through the Ariba functionality. So that has helped kind of speed up the negotiation process, because it's not Intel saying reduce again by 10% or whatever. It's actually letting the market forces drive that. So that's another thing that I suppose to be open to doing e-auctions as well. That's all through Ariba, and the training on that is through Ariba as well. So that's another kind of key thing maybe on the pricing side. Yeah, and again, I suppose just calling out, you have your case studies ready to go, have your, if there is client references, to make it, I suppose, as adapted as best you can to what actually is being procured. I think that's the key as well.
Yeah, indeed. And I know for some businesses, the e-auction, I mean, we've talked about this at, different events. It's not, some businesses are like, do you know what, I'm not going to embark on that process. And I also think part of this is deciding whether, or not just within Intel, but any of the members around, whether that is a process that you want to do or not, and understanding. And that's partly why we're asking our members to share some of this insights, so you've got a sense of how they operate and what they're doing. Grania, is there anything you can share around the sustainability? I mean, that is a topic that comes up a lot. And I don't know if there's anything you could share around what you might be looking for from a supplier around, I don't know if you've got any examples from projects you've done recently around sustainability, and what kind of, I don't know, what you're looking for.
Yeah, I suppose it's everything. It's both, I suppose, from an ethical perspective. So again, like we would ask a lot, like this, I suppose the standard questions that we would ask in the RFP. Around your company, around the ethics. Is there any like kind of legal proceedings out there? We obviously would do our checks as well, but like we've seen in the past where, you might have companies out there that are holding employees' passports, in certain countries and things like that, just so I suppose it's around just kind of making sure that, from an ethical perspective, do you have a website, like do you have a corporate social responsibility, section in that? So again, it's your public, your public face. So internally you have the values, the ethics, but are you basically pushing that out, saying publicly, this is what our company aspires to do? I think that's key there. And then around, I suppose it depends on the sector around the sustainability piece, but again, around the, the whole kind of environmental piece, I think would be key as part of that as well. What are we doing in, kind of conservation? Again, it could be like conserving energy, water. It depends on the industry, really, what would be included there. So a lot of information around that. So yeah, and again, around kind of the external reporting, findings, things like that. That would be key as well.
External accreditations, I guess. There might be. Yes. For example, you might need a specific certification or an accreditation, but that would all be shared up front so that they know. Yeah, they know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then also then it's in terms of like your business and your structure and the, are you a diverse supplier? And we have obviously a lot of key questions there around that. And then I suppose we would also ask, and if you're not, then will you commit to having a diverse, inclusive supply chain? And we would say up front, even there before it even gets to contract stage, around the 10%, of your Intel business with diverse suppliers in your supply chain as well. I think that's kind of key. And then I suppose then, like if I'm looking at, if you are obviously women-owned business on the call today, you'd be saying, yes, I'm a diverse supplier. We would ask then, are you certified? So again, in EMEA, there's a lot of people that aren't certified. So that would be an opportunity then as well, where we would kind of make the introductions to WeConnect if they don't already know about WeConnect and what that brings, and really in terms of like if it makes sense for your business to go and get certified. I think that's another kind of key question we would ask as well. Yeah, so again, like I said, we that there's a lot of key kind of general company information and stuff that we would ask, financials, things like that, maybe like
Cheryl's
last 3 years.
Cheryl's just saying they've got accreditation with EcoVadis, which it's a name that I hear a few times. And so, I mean, I guess it's understanding, as a supplier, not just a diverse supplier, but the brilliant suppliers that you are, having having these things in place that you might need if you want to bid, for any business really. But that's a CSR accreditation, and there's different things there, and what supplier. I've got another question, Grania, around So we're diverse suppliers, and just really around proactively, how do we alert somebody within the Intel business that we're here, we're interested. For example, this example is, they're interested in, say, providing HR services. What would be a good way for them to try and knock on the door of Intel?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think, Maggie, it helps like that if the introduction then is done by We Connect to us, if we don't already know you as the supplier. So like that, if there's many ways you obviously can do that. You have the emails, but then again, I think it's around, the database is going to be brilliant for us because I think it's going to be easy accessible. So I think if you're on there, it's going to be easier for us to go and search and find you. I think that's going to be critical.
Yeah,
and also maybe as well, if there's certain countries that you like this day and age, pretty much a lot of support can be done in many different countries. So I think like that in terms of your capabilities and what countries you would say yes 100% support, which are 50-50 or whatever. I think there are areas then where maybe there's other suppliers that could fill that gap. So again, it could be something where we could understand the overall landscape and figure out from a tier 2 perspective, even there could be multiple suppliers completing that scope. So it's not just like there's a big scope, I couldn't possibly support Intel globally. That there certainly is opportunities, regionally, in country, partnering with other suppliers, coming under the umbrella of a tier 1. So don't just discount it because you think it's a huge corporation and I'll never get in the door and I'll never support everything. That's not the case. That there's always opportunity, and I think it's just a matter of identifying the key areas and finding the right capability.
And I have to say, over the years, Intel, are a very big supporter of supplier diversity generally, of We Connect, and of the other supplier diversity organizations, which is amazing. Thank you so much for that support. And over the years, we've done a number of events. I'm sure we will be doing more, whether they're virtual or in person. And indeed, we've had the Intel team have facilitated lots of introductions to us to women-owned businesses who are now, an active part of the We Connect international community, which is amazing. Grania has referenced the new platform, the new We Community. So if you haven't seen them already, keep an eye open for the emails about updating your profiles on that. But it is based on the SAP Ariba platform technology. And actually, what we hope is that will then help you to be, more easily findable by all of all of the corporations we work with. And Ariba is a tool, a mainstream procurement tool that a lot of the corporations work with. So that is an aspect of being ready to do that. If you want to, bid for business with some of the firms, you do have to do this. But as Grania said as well, there's maybe some parts of your business that maybe don't follow exactly that line. So not always a one size fits all, but generally speaking, there are processes, there are ERPXs, and there's all these different things, and just being aware of it. And I hope that this session, has given you a bit more insight. Have we got any final questions for Grania? I don't see anything else in the chat. I don't have
my question directly, if you don't mind, Maggie.
Please, Andrea. Yes, please.
Sorry, because it would be a little bit too much to write, and English is not my mother tongue, so I rather speak before I write something. So we are very used to the Ariba RFPs because we are working for quite some corporates, especially in the IT business. And I fully understand it's a great tool because you can compare much better. You have the same questions and all of that. But my point is, you said on a later stage, when you had kind of valued out, you will go in direct contact and talk to the supplier then on a personal base, right?
Yes, yeah.
Because
so we would... we would typically, like I said, we would reach out to the suppliers. The tool just helps. It's better than me emailing it from my inbox and over and back. And it just takes so much time. And at least when it's on Ariba, then our stakeholders are part of the team, if you like, on Ariba on the system. We can answer questions quicker. The responses come back in quicker, and it's all in the one location. Hopefully in a similar format that allows comparison quicker as well. And then we would typically, like I said, as part of that process, then, meet with the suppliers for capability call or presentation call and things like that as well. So again, if there's things that, we maybe don't fully understand based on what's written, they would get the chance to speak directly to Intel and questions over and back. Yeah.
That's great, because we recently had one RFP, which was fully only on Ariba, including the e-auction. Like with us as an event company, it's more about, daily rates for certain like technical and stage director and all that stuff, and including an e-bidding for savings. So they also did an e-bidding like what you plan to save for the company. And there was on no way, and they will do it fully over Ariba only, so there is no way to really present yourself, which I find a little bit difficult because especially in the events business, it's a service, that is also based on trust and experience. And somebody that might be more expensive can need less time because they are so experienced.
Yes.
You know where I'm coming from?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If you have a long-term relationship I mean, we are doing that stuff since 26 years. So we have a really good network and good connections to hotels. So we are not starting with a rec rate. When I call certain hotels, we immediately, because I tell them, folks, we don't need to go that forth and back crap, because that is time consuming. So they know they should give us the price they really can afford if I hand that in. But I have to kind of sign how many % I save them. It doesn't look right. So it's hard for us to pitch only based on Ariba. And I'm happy to hear that you are taking the time at the end to really talk to your like preferred ones. I mean, you will sort out which like top 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, but that really give them the chance to talk and explain. Because if you
Andrea, I totally agree. And I think a lot of the firms that we work with will be doing a little bit using the tools and the technology to make it as efficient as possible, but also having
I'm happy to hear.
But I also know that some firms do use, and Grania, you've maybe heard different presentations at conferences and things. Some do use a more, maybe only use the kind of like an e-auction and different things like that. So but there is a bit of a mix across the group, but certainly across the board with the members that we're working with, they're keen to meet and connect and try and find out more from our diverse suppliers about who they are, so that when they get invited that they feel, and Grania, you touched on this already, that the pre-qualification, so that if you do invite them, that you think they've got a chance to this. And I think that's an important point. I don't want I don't want any supplier to have to go and do a whole process if it's maybe just a tick in the box. And I think our firms are, our members are not looking at that. They're really trying to engage.
I don't think anybody has the time, including us in procurement, to be including, like, the more suppliers you have, the more evaluations, everything we've got to do. So I definitely, we do our best to assess the market, include the right suppliers, and like I said, work with the business stakeholders to make sure that we are including a diverse supplier, give somebody else a chance, like not just the usual people that you might include on a certain cycle. So definitely that is something that we try and drive.
Yeah, and it's and this is one of the points around that it's not. This is one of the things I always say. It's not always easy, and I think when for any smaller diverse supplier, not just our women-owned businesses, and it's why we wanted to provide this insight so that you understand how different firms are approaching things. So you can go, right, actually that works for me, or no, I don't like that process. I'm going to focus on other businesses, other wins over there. Are there any final questions for the group? Or I say we will be able to share the recording. We're hopefully going to be able to do that next week sometime. Any other questions that you'd like to ask while we've got Grania here? No? Brilliant. Grania, you've covered an awful lot of ground. Thank you so much. And as I said, thank you to you and Dee and Meg and the whole of the Intel team for your support of WeConnect International. Over many years, we've worked closely for a long time, and I'm really looking forward to how we can help you reach the 2 billion. Yes. I hope some of that
we would definitely love our local EMEA suppliers to be there in that mix for sure. So
absolutely, I hope we can get some of our women-owned businesses who are on the call today, whether you've joined live or if you're listening back to the recording. If you've got to this point, I hope that it's spend that we can also put through to your business too. And I look forward to helping you reach those 2030 goals. This is not an easy topic, everybody, so it's amazing to work with such great corporations who are really pushing the agenda in this European region. And yeah, I'm looking forward to what we can achieve together. So Grania and the Intel team, thank you so much again. Thank you to everybody who's joined today for your questions. Very, very welcome. If there's anything that you think we can assist with from a WeConnect perspective, please don't hesitate to get in touch with the team here. I'm always happy to help as best we can. And if we can't help, we'll try and point in the right direction to people who can. So thank you again, Gráinne, brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody.
No problem. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.